This is Pam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Dr. Orman. Thank you for being on the show today. How are you doing?
I am fine, Pam. Thank you for having me.
So we are going to talk today about why people find it hard to forgive. But before we get to that, I always ask every guest that's on the show a couple questions before we get to the heart of your story. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Well, I've been a medical doctor for over 50 years, and I retired about 10 years ago from actual professional medical work. But it's still in my bones. I still enjoy helping people, helping them improve their well-being, their happiness, their health. And that's sort of what drove me in my medical practice and my medical career. And I still feel like I'm functioning as a physician now. Actually, I feel like I can do some things now, preventive wise. I can prevent more things by helping people lower their stress levels and their anger levels and things like that than I could when I was practicing medicine and sort of just patching people up when they got sick.
I was looking at like you've got 40 years of anger, like management or expertise. And why do you feel in today's modern society there's so much like hostility and division and anger, and it's like it has this like toxic level of frustration that we can see like in news reports when certain things bubble up?
Well, you just turn on your social feeds and just scroll, and you'll see a lot of angry people. Turn on your television, or news, you'll see a lot of angry people. It's just, it's like there's an epidemic of anger. But really what's underneath of that is that I found that people do not really understand their emotions. And part of the reason for that is we have not been educated well. A lot of the stuff we've been taught isn't helpful, and some of it's inaccurate, but we haven't really been given the good stuff. We haven't really been given the insights that can give us some power and control over our emotions. So most people their emotions have sort of power over and control over them. And wherever their emotions take them, that's where they go. And it's kind of hard for them to resist.
Yeah, because if you don't like, I practice Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism, and it kind of teaches me meditation and chanting and regulation, practices that make you have more contemplative.
Yes.
And then I'm an artist, so artists tend to have that looking glass self thing where they look at what they're doing and their frustrations and they turn it into art rather than like hitting somebody or yelling at somebody. You take it and you turn it into a piano chord, right? You take it and you go on a bass guitar and you turn it into a feeling.
Yes.
Or a painter. And I've talked to painters, I've talked to all kinds of artists that they transmute their frustrations into art.
Yes.
Is it that some people, because they were never given that kind of tool to turn that frustration or the emotional issues into something positive, that they do go with the negative?
Well, I think they go with the negative because they don't have any other, better options. I mean, you found an option that was better, than just running with the emotion or let the emotion kind of run you. You found a way to gain some control over your emotion through your particular skill set and your particular history. A lot of people don't have really good strategies for dealing with their emotions. A lot of times they'll turn to like alcohol or drugs, or, they'll get into bad habits that just not only doesn't fix the emotion problem, but it adds all kinds of new problems in their lives. So we really have, everybody gets their emotions stirred up and everybody gets angry from time to time. And for some people, when it happens frequently or they get triggered easily, they really need to know what's going on. And like I said, we haven't really been well educated to understand that whole process.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be part of our, training. Like when I lived in Japan, I lived in the East. It seems to be, they would seem to have some ways of regulating that from my experience in the East. Different practices.
There's a lot of stuff we're not taught in school that we probably should be. I mean, we're not taught much about relationships.
Yeah.
We're not taught about basic, money skills and budgeting and checkbooks and things like that. But we're definitely not taught about how to deal with stress, powerfully or how to deal with emotions powerfully. If anything, it's the opposite. We're taught how to be stressed, and we're taught how to have a lot of emotions by the training and a lot of the indoctrination that goes on in schools. It gets everybody riled up. Here's who you should be angry at, and here's who you should be protesting. We get all that kind of stuff getting us riled up, and then the media just feeds right into that.
Mm-hmm.
The media makes us angry, and that's their business model, basically, to create a lot of emotional, stirring up of emotions to get people to click on their
Well, even on social media now, we have like niches for all your grievances.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you can find a community that agrees with your grievance.
Yeah, or you can find something to irritate you.
Yeah. You just get this bad loop, like we call it. Like, you get these things that reinforce the bad loop.
Yes.
That don't get you to kind of de-escalate from the bad loop. They get you more riled up.
Yes.
And then nobody's ever trained you how do you actually shake it off? Like the deer running away from the wolf.
Yeah, and that's when I was in my 20s and 30s. That's how I was. I mean, I got triggered very easily. I got angry very easily. I had a lot of anger, and here I was a very educated guy. I'd gone through 7 years of medical training, and I even dabbled in psychology, and I was in therapy for a while around that time. So I was very well educated, and I read a lot of books, self-help books, but it didn't matter. It didn't help. Like I never landed on the key insights that I later discovered that enabled me to really free myself from this anger problem, which I never even thought was possible, to tell you the truth. If you'd have come up to me back then and said, "Do you ever see a day when you wouldn't be an angry guy?" I would have said, "No, I just think that's part of my DNA. I just think that's part of my personality. I think I've tried a zillion things to stop, and it doesn't stop. So I guess it's always going to be that way." And then fast forward a year or two later, I made some really important discoveries about anger, where it comes from, and within me, and saw ways that I could, once I understood some of the missing puzzle pieces, now I can do something about it. So, and like getting back to your question, that's what really motivates me. I mean, I saw in my practice, as a doctor, we know the angry people from the not so angry people in our practice, and we see them all. We follow them all over time and see what happens to them in terms of their health and they come in and tell us what's going on in their life. If they got divorced or got addicted to something, or they ran afoul of the law, or their business partnership broke up. So we see that the angry people in our practice have much more of these problems than the not so angry people, and then you're sitting there as a doctor with your own anger that you kind of have to put a lid on because it's not professional. but you're realizing, hey, I'm going to end up like this if I don't do something, about it. That's what kind of drove me to start looking for what the missing puzzle pieces were, and it took several years to figure them out. Yeah.
Is it even harder for somebody in the medical profession because you have to absorb everybody else's problem?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so then you're kind of told to push down your problem because you've got to address your patient's problem. And then you given enough time to recover? Like athletes, we got to recover.
Yeah.
Musician, like I can't keep on playing that bass over and over. I'm going to get carpal tunnel unless I give myself time to recover. So it's like it was not thought that you'd have to have recovery time, or somehow everybody's like a Superman.
Well, it is one of the occupational hazards of being a health professional. You have to a lot of time we sacrifice ourselves and our health, both physical and emotional, in the service of taking care of other people. It really shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately, a lot of health professionals end up in that situation. There's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of divorces. There's a lot of suicides, among health professionals. There's a lot of carnage, because you kind of like put your own needs aside, and you just focus on what you need to do to help other people, and you end up getting a short straw sometimes.
Is it kind of built that way because it's not giving you the normal kind of like on and off, like you can't stay on. It's to the detriment. There's like diminishing returns if you stay on, right? If you keep on working like 90 hours.
Yeah, it's a very high demand profession. Now, I took steps early on in my career to limit it somewhat. So I didn't try to make it, like the most money I could possibly make. I just wanted to be comfortable. I wasn't married at the time. I didn't have a lot of expenses. So I didn't have to build a huge practice that would take me over. And I'd be like, a hamster on a hamster wheel,
Yeah,
you
you
know.
can't get off.
So, I had somewhat control over my lifestyle to a certain degree, but you're on call all the time, and you have to respond in the middle of the night to emergencies and weekends. And, it's like nonstop. But, and a lot of health professionals just go overboard and end up working 80, 90 hours a week and don't take care of themselves. They don't get a physical relief. They don't get emotional,
Are
relief.
they going to therapy? Are they giving themselves?
They don't have time. They don't have
time because like it seems like the regimen in the industry is like, well, yeah, that's the standard. So you got to be within that standard, and kind of it's a badge of honor to like.
It's like, yeah, it is kind of like that. It's kind of, the stress is like a badge of honor. The burnout, not the burnout, but just being overworked and overburdened, and doing good work though. But really, making a difference in people's lives is nice, and it's rewarding. So it's a good profession in that sense. But it really can chew up a lot of people that go into it.
Yeah, it's like if you get these like top performing like entrepreneurs, they'll burn themselves out.
Yes,
because they build these empires, and it's like they're always on two, because they'll build one and then they'll build two, and then they'll run like three at the same time.
Yeah,
it's like,
but it's actually it's worse than that. It's not just the time; it's the mentality. When the way we're trained. I was trained for 7 years. It was like a 7-year boot camp. It was 4 years of medical school and 3 years of internship and residency. And every day, there were certain values that were drilled into me, certain mindsets that were drilled into me that were great for being a successful doctor, but were not so good for being a happy, healthy human being. Things about, perfectionism, being a perfectionist, always needing to be right, always, trying to be in control. Those are things that come in handy when you have your physician hat on. Not all the time, but a lot of the times that's what you're called on to do. Is people, are in an emergency situation and you have to step in and take control when everybody's going crazy and freaking out. That's what people look to you to do. So it's important professionally, but then when you go home, to your kids or your spouse or whatever, and you try and run those numbers on your family, it doesn't turn out so well.
Well, you're wearing you got this mask on to do this, right? It's like, you got to have like Superman kind of Overman kind of thing. You got to be perfect.
And you literally have to know how to you have to really turn it off when you walk in the door. You have to let go, which is very hard for a lot of people to do once you've immersed yourself in it for like 7 straight years. Your brain gets conditioned to just automatically want to go there. And you have to fight against it. Actually, you have to get some insight into, hey, my brain has been conditioned to do things that are going to harm my relationships, are going to harm my health, harm, me emotionally and physically. And okay, I can't let that happen. I got to sort of figure out how to deal with that.
It's like a method actor. Like, you can't stay. Yeah. Some method actors would stay in the role.
Yes.
To their detriment. Because like if you're playing like a narcissist and you stay in the narcissist role.
Yes.
Then it's like, well, you're off stage and you're still playing them.
Yeah. So now, it happens a lot to doctors because we are in this. We do get in. We'd have to be perfectionists. We just have to. You can't make a mistake. You can't overlook some minor, decimal point somewhere. Somebody could die. So, I mean, it's not just, we're not the only profession that has that. I mean, if you're in the military, that's important. If you do, if you're sending people to the moon,
you're engineers, and if you're a rocket engineer, those tiny.
You got to be precise. You got to be precise and accurate.
Super precise. Once there's a human on that rocket, it's not the test anymore.
Yeah.
So you got to have it right. So.
I wouldn't want to be the guy that was responsible for sending Katy Perry into space and bringing her back.
No, it's like there's certain levels of engineering, like you're taking aeronautical, aerospace, certain things, like there's a high risk, and you got to get it right.
So getting back to your question, but that's what motivates me. That's wanting to share with people the insights that I gained I didn't see very many people having the knowledge of, or having the awareness of. And it's so powerful. It gives you so much more control over your emotions that people don't even believe. When I talk to people about eliminating anger, they look at me like I'm from Mars. It's like, what are you talking about? You can't eliminate anger.
But they feel like it's kind of part of the toolkit.
Yeah.
Like it does, the anger becomes so much part of the life that like you can't see you're separating.
And over the 40 years I've been doing this, I've run into a number of people who are very protective of their anger. They value their anger. They think it's part. They if you say to them, "Hey, I could help you get rid of half of that anger that's not really serving you, that's causing problems in your life," they go, "No, the anger is what makes me human. If I lost my anger, I feel like I was losing part of my humanity."
Well, they lose their edge. Like they lose their edge because
but it's not true. But they wrap their identity into it, and it's become a part of them that they value, and they don't see. They kind of have a blind eye to all the damage it's causing.
That's like the myth and the misconception is like it's actually necessary.
Correct. Like a lot of people think in a relationship you have to be arguing and fighting, or you're not in love.
Oh, the drama. Well, yeah, I think a lot of romance is based on the drama.
Yeah,
and the drama doesn't happen unless you cause like an issue.
Yeah. And you can have perfectly fine relationships without a lot of drama, a lot of anger, and they're actually better that way. Yeah. But if you believe that to have a good relationship you have to be fighting frequently, and that's part and parcel of having a good relationship, then you're going to create things to fight about. I mean, there's no lack of things to fight about. You have to actually work at not fighting.
We'll find in the comment, being a diplomat instead of being a warrior. You actually de-escalate. And maybe de-escalating isn't romantic. It isn't sexy. It isn't like
that's right.
You're reading a romance novel, you saw the romance film, and the escalation looks more appealing.
Yes. Right? One of the things I concept I developed was something called the 007 effect. And it's how when people get married and they have a marriage license, okay, they treat it like it's a license to kill. Mm-hmm. Like it means if we're married, okay, now we can really go at each other. Now we can really, criticize each other and blame each other and, be angry with each other and fight with each other. It's like the license gives them, it's like 007. It's like I have a license to kill now.
Mr. Jones, you're having a big fight, you're like.
And they don't realize they're killing their relationship. The more that they engage in those behaviors, all that blame and criticism and tearing the other person down. That's not what you want to do in a relationship. If you want to have a happy one, you want to build each other up. You want to support each other. You want to, be kind and caring to each other. And so people just get this crazy mindset that they think that's what married people are supposed to do.
Yeah.
And it's like crazy.
Well, is it because, it's part of like the social moray. I was a sociology major, and people, have a moray, like your grandpa and your grandma, your uncles, everybody in your family, all your friends. That's the pattern you see. And the
sitcoms just enforce that.
Too, you're watching Archie Bunker and you see that, you go see the honeymooners and you saw that. It's like, okay, that's how I'm supposed to go to the moon. You're like, that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah, I guess that's what if that's what a whole generation saying, go to the moon, Alice. Like, maybe that's what you're gonna do.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how our brains, get conditioned to do a lot of stuff that's detrimental in our lives, and if you don't have that introspection or that awareness to look at yourself honestly and say, okay, here's the good ways my brain's been conditioned, and here's the not so good ways it's been conditioned. Okay, I can let it run when it's in good mode. But when it's in bad mode, I got to step in, and I've got to recognize what it's doing and what's going on, and then that's really that's the secret sauce for dealing with anger and other emotions. Is you've got to take on your brain when it's leading you down a bad path, that's making you very emotional. Because a lot of times, one of the things I discovered that I was shocked to discover is that when we're angry and upset, our brains are often tricking us, and we think our brain's giving us correct, truthful, complete information, and it's frequently not. So it's pretending that it is, but usually there are a lot of things missing, and there are a lot of holes in the stories that makes us believe, and then we get all riled up because of that. not realizing that our brain is giving us bad information. It's not just other people and not just the media,
You're interpreting like
but
the
our own
world.
brains are filtering things in a way that leaves a lot of stuff out and hides stuff from us or misrepresents what makes us think somebody did something for a certain reason when that wasn't the truth about why they did it. We just never bothered to ask them. We just assumed we knew what our brain told us. So, we get all these misdirections that our brain, thinking that our brain's giving us really good, really accurate, perspectives. And when we're angry, it's frequently not.
Yeah, so it's like the listening skill. Like a lot of things, like you're saying, there's a filter
There's
there. So
multiple filters.
yeah, so you're getting like you're only hearing what your brain is like being primed to hear.
Yes.
So
But
even if you went back and listened to the tape, like you're like, oh, I didn't hear that.
yeah. But our brains, that's what our brains do all the time. I mean, we just don't notice it. But constantly, all day long, our brains are giving it. We're not seeing the world as it actually happens. We're only seeing what our brain tells us is happening or allows us to see based on how it determines what's important or not important.
Yeah, I can
And
see that.
many years ago, brains realized that there's just too much information in the real world that's coming into the senses. They can't bring it all in and show us all of it. They have to chunk it down. They have to simplify it. They have to figure out what's important from what's not important, and filter out the noise, and just show you what you need to stay alive or to make good decisions or to achieve your goals or be successful at whatever you're trying to do. So our brains are always filtering things, and there's always leaving things out based on what it thinks or what's learned, how to process the world. So we're never seeing an accurate view of what's going on. We're only seeing a filtered view. It's like we're watching different movies, but the movies are being created by our brains.
But it sounds like the philosophy, Sartre, Camus, Nietzsche, they always kind of pointed out that your perception and your reality were it's two different things. It's like you get into the philosophical. I went to Bowdoin.
Well, it's not just philosophical. It's not just philosophical. It's real. It's neuroscience.
Yeah,
it's biology.
I mean, they were kind of getting to it without the science. I mean, they were kind of
yes. But that is the fundamental problem. That's the fundamental problem around anger. The fundamental problem around anger is what's the difference between what you believe is true, which is making you angry, and what's really true.
Mm-hmm.
And there's usually big gaps that we don't see, and our brain doesn't want us to see them.
It's really the kind of primal instinct to keep you safe.
Yes.
So it's kind of like the fight or flight.
Yes, and that's how the brain developed and evolved. It wasn't optimized for accuracy. It was optimized for can I get him to make a quick decision
get out of here
that keeps him alive. Doesn't matter if if there's a rustling in the bush and I tell him it's a snake, and he runs, he's going to stay alive.
Stay alive.
Doesn't matter doesn't matter that I was wrong and it wasn't a snake. It was a bunny rabbit or something like that.
Yeah.
The brain doesn't care about accuracy. It just cares about can I keep you alive?
But in the modern world, that can be like not useful. At least for your forward development.
Yes.
Maybe in a world where you're living out in the forest or in the jungle or in the mountains is like, that's highly useful.
Yes.
But like in a modern world where you're supposed to communicate with other human beings, that's too blunt an instrument. So then we need to this is where you're saying the education doesn't really go and give you the rigor to like retrain yourself.
The education that we need, that we should be getting in middle school and high school, is that a lot of times when you get real emotional, let's take anger as an example. A lot of times when you get real emotional, your brain is tricking you. It's not telling you what's true. It's giving you half truths or partial truths, and it's leaving a lot of stuff out. And you're reacting emotionally to whatever pictures your brain or filters your brain is giving you, which may not be accurate. Mm-hmm. So it's incumbent upon you to interrupt that process if you can, and start asking some questions. Like, what could my brain be wrong? I mean, the picture I'm looking at that's making me angry, could I be mistaken?
With the
Or could
critical thinking, yeah,
yeah, could I have left? Is my brain leaving out important information? Or is it misrepresenting certain things, making me think somebody is such and such a person when they're not?
yeah,
And our brains are doing that all the time, and that's what to be a human being. We're always up against that. We're always forced to do something or not about that situation we're in, and a lot of times we're not being taught that that's what's going on when we get emotional. And then
well,
we're
yeah,
not giving people very concrete, simple skills and formulas to understand, okay, when I'm angry, how's my brain causing me to think? When
mhm,
I'm anxious, how is my brain causing me to think? There's usually 2 or 3 filters. They're very simple. And if you know the formula, you can actually write it down on a piece of paper, on a sticky note or something. And you can, it's like having X-ray vision, like Superman, like X-ray vision
yeah,
into where your emotions are coming from. We've got this whole wrong picture about emotions. We think emotions are coming from the things that people are doing outside of us. The
yeah,
bad stuff they're doing, the things they're saying. We think it's all the emotions are directly being caused by the outside stuff, and that's not the truth. The emotions are always being caused by our brains internally.
mhm,
This is why you can have 2 people, 2 friends, or 2 family members can stand side by side, witness the exact same event, and
see
one will
different,
get one emotion and the other will get a different emotion or no emotion at all, because it's never the external event that causes the emotion. It's the filters that our brain give us to
that's why
look at that event and to
witnesses
believe
are
that what we think is true about that event, and that's what causes the emotion. Well, not only are we not being taught that basic principle, but nobody's come along and saying, here are the filters that are going to make you angry. Here are the filters that are going to make you anxious. Wouldn't it be nice to know that? So every time you get anxious or angry, now you know how your brain made you feel that way. And that's what I discovered 40 years ago. And let me tell you something, it has made a world of difference in my life. I can step in now when I have anxiety or when I have anger, I can turn it off like lickety split because I know exactly how my brain's creating it. And people are not teaching this.
well, it
They are
seems like
not
there's
teaching.
certain like people within like the tech bro community that people who create algorithms on the net that maybe kind of figured it out.
No, there's no evidence they figured out. But you know what we could do? We could take those algorithms that are knowable, okay? We could put them in our computers. So we get angry, we go, Alt A, and it pops up on the screen. So, okay, here's how your brain's making you angry. It's causing you to think it this way, and this way. And they, oh, okay, now now I know what questions to ask.
Hmm.
Now I know what filters to question or challenge or see if there's where something's missing, because now I know what the filters are my brain gave me, and now I can do that work. I can't if I don't know what they are, which most people don't. I can't do the questioning. I can't do the investigation to figure out where the holes are.
I
And let
guess
me
I
tell you
would,
something.
yeah,
Once you figure out that your brain has tricked you and you know exactly how it misled you and what it misrepresented, your anger just in the moment you understand what's really true, your anger just goes away without
mhm,
having to do anything. You don't have to punch a punching bag. You don't have to take deep breaths. You don't have to run 5 miles. You don't have to do anything. You just have to see the situation in a more clear, truthful way than what your brain told you was true about it in the first place that got you angry.
so it has to do with like linguistic programming, or
Well, your brain is linguistically programmed, and that's where the anger comes from. It's giving you stories. It's telling you, here's what's happening. Here's how you should think about it. Okay. And it's very precise. It's really like a computer program. And it's just three lines of code. And if you run those 3 lines of code, you're going to get anger every time if you believe those 3 things. And the same for the other emotions. I mean, is whether it's guilt or worry or sadness or jealousy, every emotion has like a 3-line, algorithm or formula that your brain uses to stir you up emotionally.
hmm.
And those can be learned. They can be taught. The anger one I wrote about in my book. So I give people my book called Dr. Orman's Life Changing Anger Cure that you can get on Amazon. I go into the whole 9 yards of, this whole filtering thing and where it came from, and what the filters are for anger and how you can learn them and how you can use them, and also how you can pick them apart, how you can interrogate them and do, like, some real truth testing on them, so that you can figure out what's true and what's not true. And a lot of times, some of them are true. If they're three, a lot of times, at least maybe two of them are going to be true, but if any one of them is false, and you figure that out, it's like the anger just goes poof, it just disappears, because it requires all three to be maintained.
So this is more like I guess the difference between anger management,
Yes,
and actual, like, how would you put it?
anger elimination,
Elimination.
because you can really eliminate. You can eliminate the anger at its source, which is your brain. Okay, that's where it's coming from. Anger management is, all right, I got triggered. My brain did its thing. I don't know about it. I don't know what it's doing. I know I'm angry. Okay. And now I've got this anger building up in me. What am I going to do? Now I can release it. There are good ways to do that, not so good ways to do that. I want to keep it from damaging my relationship. I want to keep it from damaging my health, my career. There's all these tricks and techniques and things you can do. You can do the deep breathing. You can drink alcohol. You can take drugs. You can, do all kinds of different things. Turn on soft music, whatever, you calm yourself down. In other words, there's tapping techniques. There's Tony Robbins has some techniques for, dealing with emotions and changing your state. There's all kinds of people have all kinds. Once you've gotten angry, what you can do with the anger that's already built up. I work on the front end. I say, hey, how about if we have you stop getting angry in the first place? Wouldn't that be nice? Mm-hmm. Then you don't have anything to worry about managing, or whether it's going to be harmful to you or not, or whether you have to express it or suppress it. You just stop having it. You turn it off when you want to turn it off. Now, when it's serving you, and there are a lot of times, I work with a lot of people where anger had been very beneficial to them at some point in their life, maybe helped them get out of a bad relationship or deal with a situation that they hadn't been dealing with until they got good and angry, and then they dealt with it. So it's not that anger is always bad, but the question is, when it is harming you, or it is causing problems in your relationship or with your kids or with your health, or your doctor tells you, hey, you got to do something about your anger because your blood pressure is too high, or whatever it is. When it is causing problems, do you know how to step in and go, okay, I got to turn a bunch of that anger off, and I'll just keep the good parts that are helping me, which aren't that many, by the way. But that's what you want to be. That's the ideal. The ideal is, can I choose when I want to be angry and when I don't want to be angry? And when I get triggered, to go into automatic anger mode and my brain does its thing, do I know what it's doing? Mm-hmm. And do I know how to defend against it? And make the anger go away whenever I want to. And that's what I learned how to do 40 years ago. And I've been teaching people how to do that ever since. And it's amazing how easy it is to teach people and to learn how to do that. We've taken this whole field of emotional intelligence and we've made it so complex and so confusing. And there's so many, cockamamie theories going on about emotions, when it's very simple. It's 3 lines of code in your brain for each emotion. You just need to know what those 3 lines are for each emotion, and you can master those emotions. Because it's the same process for all of them. Your brain's tricking you into believing stuff that isn't true. And you got to figure that out and then correct whatever the mistakes are that your brain is making that it doesn't want you to realize that it's making. The media, the media is very good at making people angry, right?
Well, yeah, I'm in tech, and I'm always like very, I've been spending time looking at the algorithms and the keywords that are being used to shadow ban and control what goes to the top and what goes to the bottom.
Yeah. But this is something. This is the media. Their business model is: can we get you angry? Can we get you anxious? Can we get you clicking around? Buying our stuff or whatever. Okay, so they know how. They are the pros. If you want to find out who knows how to generate anger in a human brain, talk to the media. Mm-hmm. Actually, don't even talk to them. Watch them, because you'll see every day that's what they're doing. And they're sending you 3 narratives that are making you angry. It's the same narratives your brain is using to make you angry. They have tapped into what your brain is doing and they just feed you the same narratives, and they tell you it's true, and they tell you don't question it. We're the media. We wouldn't lie to you. Okay. Just take what we're serving you and the stories that we're giving you and the agenda and the spin that we're giving you, and just believe it. Don't look at it. Don't ask what's missing. Don't do any of that. Just trust us. And then you get good and angry when you do that, because they know the game. They know how human brains work. And they are doing exactly what we're talking about here. They know the formula. They know the stories and how to cast them to get people riled up. They do it every day.
So you're saying, but what about the information that's like, okay, so in the media, when you're talking about this media that's doing these stories, if there's a story about an actual event, you're saying they're spinning it to be something other.
Yeah, they never tell. Like I said, you never get the whole story. You never get the actual event. You get somebody's interpretation or spin on the actual event, and they decide what to tell you and what to leave out. There's always a lot of context being left out. There's always the other side being left out, whatever it is they're telling you. And there may be more than two sides that they're not telling you. So, I mean, and plus they're not telling you when they're making stuff up out of whole cloth. Okay. I can't tell you how many times when my first book came out, 1991, I did a lot of media interviews. I can't tell you, I don't think there was hardly a time when I saw I did an interview, I gave people some really juicy quotes. I never was quoted accurately, ever. Whoever wrote the story took my words and changed them, massaged them to what they wanted me to say. Sometimes completely the opposite of what my intended meaning was, they would attribute to me. They literally made stuff up and printed it like I said it. And that was in 1991. That was way before, all this political, shenanigans that we've seen recently with the media. But that's just their modus of operating. They make up stuff, but they're not going to tell you that they're making up stuff. They're going to hide that from you, just like your brain is going to make up stuff and it's going to say it's not going to tell you that. But you're going to have to be suspicious that one of those three filters has some kind of lie in it or some kind of missing information in it. And we've all had this experience. We know this happens because like you'll make an arrangement with somebody to meet you, and you let them know it's very important they be on time. It's a couple days in advance, and you tell them why it's important, and they got to transport you somewhere, and if they're late, it's going to be horrible. And you're there on time that day, and they're not there. And 5 minutes go by, and then you start, getting a little bit pissed, and another 5 minutes go by, and now you've got this whole story going on about how irresponsible they were, how you never should have trusted them, how they didn't take it seriously, how, they should have done this and that and all that kind of stuff. They should have left early and da-da-da-da. And then eventually they show up and they're all apologetic and they said, oh man, I left a half an hour early. I got stuck in this horrendous traffic jam and I was trapped. I couldn't get out. I really apologize. You didn't have that information. Your brain didn't have that information about what actually happened. But once for what the story you made up made you angry. But once the person fills in the gap and says, here's what actually happened. And I was conscientious. I did care. I was trying to be here on time. You go, oh, okay. That happened. Things happen. Okay. I understand. Anger gone. Okay. I now see the situation. There was information that I was missing that I didn't have. Now I have it. Well, your brain's doing that. Like I said, with the filtering, your brain does that 24/7 all day long. It's cutting out information and only showing you what it thinks you need to see.
I think that goes toward the problem with our modern society is with the tech today, things are like if you get into the ether of the net, things are heavily edited.
Yes.
And so the situation you're talking about is even more prevalent. Like with this podcast, I don't edit. I let it be what it is. Right. But there's a lot of podcasters, they go and they pull things together and they only want to emphasize what their vision for their show is. And they'll edit, like you're saying, to get things to fit their narrative.
Yeah.
I let it be what it is,
Yeah.
which is kind of a rare thing because not everybody does that.
Yeah.
But the idea, in society, what you're seeing is through all these filters, all these lenses, tons of data, tons of information
Too
being
much.
filtered.
There's
Yeah,
too much information.
yeah,
The brain can't let you see it all because you'd be overwhelmed. You wouldn't know what to
yeah.
do with it, you
But it's
know?
being like designed, and even if you can't see it all, the things that you are seeing are not reflective of the actual information.
Well,
There's
they
like,
may be selective of parts of it, but they're
yeah,
never going to give you the whole story. They're never going to give you, and sometimes the stuff that's left out is pretty critical.
yeah. There's like
Yeah.
the people are seeing like this, just whatever fits the narrative of the day for whatever point of view it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
and even just to make things look better. There's people want things to be perfect, so there's this perfection trap. So they get rid of some of the things that actually would give you more context.
Yes.
Right? And
Absolutely.
in order to give you this artificially perfect vision of a world where the world isn't like that.
Yes. And
And
that's
so that
happening, and that's what our brain's doing all the time. That's what people are mirroring in their decisions, in how they conduct themselves and how they create content, or edit this or that or whatever. Our brain, they're just doing what our brain is doing, 24/7 all the
Mhm.
time. It's just the same process. It's just you have to be awake to it. You just have to realize that you're never seeing things accurately, even if you think you are. You know,
Mhm.
it's
'Cause, like,
always editing going on in your brain.
and then you've got to just discover, like, what's triggering your anger from what you're seeing, and then, like, have that tool set to actually have, like, an assessment that is more comprehensive, like critical thinking. Like, because if you
Yeah,
go
but
off
it's
the
but
handle,
it, it's
then
actually
you're never gonna
easier.
think.
It's actually easier. That's why I say, emotional intelligence has made it very complex. You might think there's like, well, 100 different things my brain can be doing when it's making me angry. How am I going to understand? I can't see any of it. I'm guessing. I don't, but no, it's doing three things. And it's the same three things over and over and over and over. It's only those three things. And it doesn't matter whether you're getting angry or I'm getting angry, or somebody 100 years ago got angry, or somebody 100 years now. It's the same three friggin' filters, the same three narratives, the same three lines of code. Always, always, always. So it's really simple. It's not a mystery anymore why I got angry. I got angry because I got triggered by something, and my brain gave me these three stories, and I believed them. End of story. You don't need
So
anything more. You don't need any deep psychological, emotional intelligence theories as to where human emotions come from. They come from usually three or four, maybe, but usually three main stories that our brain gives us to make us look at a situation in a certain way. And when you look at it that way and you believe that that's what's true, you will get the emotion. Later on, when you find out, oh, it wasn't really as true as I thought it was, the emotion dies down, because you realize, oh, that was silly. That was nothing to get angry about. I just misperceived the situation, or my brain did. And that's why, and when I was looking at it that way, then I was all riled up. But now that I see it more clearly, more broadly, more truthfully, now I see, okay, I see a lot more of what this real story was. And now I'm not so worked up about it.
so you're the people are more primed to have the filter that gives them the negative result.
Yeah. Well, we're primed. Most of these emotion causing filters are variations of either or frames of thinking. Somebody did something good or bad. Somebody did something right or wrong. You can or can't control something. You're blame or you weren't to blame. There are these either or frames
Mhm.
that our brain gets conditioned into our brain. Because again, remember, the brain had to make quick, decisive decisions, or make you make quick. They have to give you a frame that was really black and white, or friend or foe, danger, no danger, run, stay. It had to be like lickety split, and it had to be one of those or the other. It didn't give you a lot of nuance. It didn't give you, well, it could be both. It could be a little of this. No, you're dead by the time you're eating.
Yeah.
It had to give you a quick hit, and lock you into one of those perspectives, one side or the other, and then you act, and you act on that. And And that's still what underlies most of our emotions, is thinking like that. So it's all, and again, every either or frame, like if you, did you say Buddhism is something that you,
Yeah.
well, the Eastern traditions are much more yin yang. They much more realize that the reality of life is, it's not male versus female, or all male, or all female. It's gradations of both
Yeah. It's a lot of different
all the
colors.
time. It's a
A lot of,
spectrum. It's a
yeah.
spectrum, and it's very nuanced. Reality is very nuanced.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think it's like the Western world seems to be like yes, no,
Yes,
on, off, black, white.
and
And
that's why we have a lot of anger,
yeah,
because that's
it's
the
like
kind of thinking that underlies anger.
it's hard because like I deal with in programming we have like case statements, which basically means it's not on or off. In case this, case this, case this, and it keeps on going, 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 going. And
Yeah,
you see in software we continually update because what we knew yesterday is not what we know today. So we know we were wrong, or we
yep,
didn't know what we know today, and we make
yes.
the change.
You
So
didn't know
because
you didn't know you were wrong when you were wrong, but now you know you were wrong.
yeah, so it's like we can just we are limited to what we know at the moment, but then our code can be adapted so we can change it every day.
That
So in
that's
our
how that's a good description for anger elimination.
yeah,
You're
so
just
it's like
playing chess against your brain.
yeah,
That's what
so
you're
it's like you
doing.
just have to realize that that the game is low. It's not black and white. It's like it maybe it's not two moves. It's like five moves ahead, right?
Yeah. But it's
And
definitely not black and white. Anything that you get that's black and white, you go like, whoa, wait a second. I better relook at this, because it's probably, the reality is probably not black and white.
yeah, there's a lot more options. There are a lot of options when I do like a use case for a problem, for a
Hmm.
business problem.
Hmm.
Like you give the client a lot of options. Anytime like
Yeah.
what to do. And unless you want to guide them, like sometimes you want to guide them to like what's more beneficial to you.
Yes, I know. I know.
So you will guide them that way, or you'll be more say, hey, I'm going to give you more options than this guy. This guy's only giving you two. I'm giving you 10. Right.
Well, it's funny. You remind me of the Dalai Lama wrote a book with Desmond Tutu a while ago called The Book of Joy. And the two of them hung out together for like a week. And just every day they would just sit and have conversations about life and, their insights. And, they're both two very highly evolved human beings. And one day the Desmond Tutu asked the Dalai Lama, he said, well, what do you do when you get stuck? When you come up against a problem and you can't figure it out and you don't know what to do, what is your go-to move? What do you do? And the Dalai Lama, without, very quickly said, well, the first thing I do is I take the situation and I try to look at it from at least 7 different angles. Now, we don't do that.
They don't give that level of a perspective. Like you need to have all the variations
Yeah.
handled, right? As many as you understand. And
Yeah.
so, like when I was in Japan, it's like the idea of actually designing something for like the happy accident or the unhappy path. They would spend a lot of time on the unhappy paths, right? Which are the more complicated things to do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times in the Western concept was, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in those unhappy paths because that's not going to get me a good profit. So I'm only going to spend time on level like 1 problems. Right into Japan, they were spending tons of time on level 10s, which were not like level 1s. I was like, why are you doing that? Because we want a higher quality product.
Yeah.
So it's a different perspective mindset where this
Yeah.
guy doesn't want to handle those. So then you get this level of quality. And this
Yeah.
guy does, and then you get a totally different level of quality. It's like, wow, well, how can that be this reliable? Well, because they're thinking a different way than you do.
And the reality of life is that there's multiple, those multiple perspectives are valid, and they can add to the picture and to the outcomes. But it's more work, and you got to train your brain to go there, because it doesn't naturally want to go. It wants to narrow, simplify, black and white, either or, let's decide what you want to do and let's get out of here. Let's move on to the next thing. As long as you're still alive, we're happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you want to go to high level performance, you got to get much more nuanced. You got to do all these, you got to rise above the limitations of your normal default brain mechanism,
Yeah, spend more time on like the off things that are not likely to happen.
Yeah.
But people don't want to. We have a patience deficit in this modern era. People can't read a 200,000 word book. They got to read a 50,000 word book.
Yeah. Or listen to a condensation, for 10 minutes.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just can't. If you try to watch a movie from the 70s with somebody today, it was like the pacing's too slow.
Yes.
They can't. They don't have the patience for it. It's like, it has to happen faster than that. So it's like,
Yeah.
so we're losing some of our discernment.
Yes.
To me,
And you need, if you're going to eliminate anger, you have to start discerning, what's true from what's not true, and that takes practice. We all have the ability to do it. It just we don't do it very often, so we're not that good at it when we start. I wasn't great at it when I started, but the more I did it, this was 40 years ago, I got better and better and better. So now I'm like really very fast when it comes to deducing what's true and what's not true, because I know the different tricks my brain has used in the past. And I can usually, okay, that's trick number 33.
Well, that's kind of like, it's like, I think a lot of people don't realize that your brain, like if you're an athlete and you're going to do all these repetitions so you can do that play, you can do that, quarterback can get these different plays, he gets these different situations. He's doing a lot of preparation to do that.
He's training, he's rewiring his brain.
And even if he doesn't see the play he practiced on, if he's there and he's gotten himself to a certain level, he can even figure it out on the fly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you've gotten yourself into this space where even if something unexpected happens, I still can respond.
Yes.
So the problem, I think, is that people aren't given that kind of rigor to the reprogramming.
And again, we're not encouraging these kinds of things in our educational system. We're not we're not having conversations like this in middle school, or high school.
Which I thought it was a priority because we were just trying to teach like STEM or trying to get close to STEM, but not understand that there's other things that are necessary as a human being to have some capabilities to be a human being that's going to be functional.
They'll teach them all about the workings of a computer, but they won't teach them how to deal with their anger so that they won't punch a hole in the computer when they get angry.
Throw it out the window. It's like,
or throw it out the window, right?
Yeah, it's like you got to have that level of mental rigor, or like the ability to be self-critical. Yes. Looking glass self is what the Victorians talked about.
Yes.
They could go and look in the mirror and you do that assessment. And I would always read Lord Byron, Wordsworth, Whedon. A lot of that stuff in my liberal arts education, what I liked about it, once I got a good understanding of that older English, is the depth of the stuff they would get into. That some people today, they say, well, I don't need to know that. And I think sometimes you do need to know. That you to take the time to actually learn what was taught in the past. Even like I took Latin classes, like the stuff that we were taught, that the older generations, different cultures knew, whether Eastern or Western, that it's important to kind of build off of what human knowledge is. And now we're just trying to,
I was a chemistry major in college, and so I studied all this chemistry. And then I went to medical school. I didn't use any chemistry in my medical practice. I didn't need to know any chemistry. I didn't need to use any chemistry. But boy, the mental process of learning and mastering chemistry really came in handy, because it's the same thing when you do a differential diagnosis. Somebody comes in with a symptom or a problem, you've got to go through a whole system of, how do you figure out what it is? Well, in chemistry lab one day, they gave us these 4 beakers with clear fluids in each one of them, and they all had some chemicals dissolved in them. And they said, your job for the semester is figure out what's in each beaker, and then extract it.
Extract it out. Yeah, learn the method to be able to extract.
Yeah, but the first part is you had to diagnose it. You had to it could be anything, and you had to go through this process of figuring out what. When eventually you knew what it was. But and so I never used that specific knowledge.
But the process, the concept this is what happens, which is why people don't understand why it's important to have kind
Yeah.
of cross pollination of disciplines.
Yes.
Because like if you get cross pollinated with like the logic from chemistry to be able to do what you're talking about
Yeah.
with like mathematical skill set, or like
Well, it's
doing
like a patient comes into your office, a new patient comes into your office, your doctor, they sit down in your office. It's like somebody put a beaker in front of you and,
yeah. Well,
and
you
say,
take
you got to figure out what's going on in there.
the discernment to be able to do that analysis, like
Yes. Yeah.
analytical thinking to be able to kind of pull something out. Like
Mhm.
I try to pull out requirements in the JAD session for programmers, joint application development session,
Mhm.
user stories, use case methodology,
Mhm. Mhm.
waterfall versus agile. We have all these different methodologies to try to figure out foundational changes, structural changes, non-structural changes, be able to diagnose what is the business problem, what could be the solution,
Yes.
and have different options. So we have to look at things like from like you're breaking it, not breaking it, stressing it,
Yeah.
advancing it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's somewhat similar to what you're talking about, but to me, it's like in a world where people are getting less rigor,
Yes.
and,
I agree.
and
I totally
it,
agree with
it,
you. Yeah.
it's very difficult to navigate when people have less rigor. They're like, okay, well, what's your level of understanding of this issue? And then when they give you like, oh, okay, um, so like, okay, we need to have a little deeper discussion, but do they even want to go deep?
And like you say, a lot of people don't want to do the deep thinking today.
Yeah, it's hard because it's like, well, I'll get the AI to do it. It's like, no, I want you to do it. I don't want ChatGPT to do it. I want you to show me that you know how to solve this problem, because
Yeah.
I can use ChatGPT. So why do I need you?
Yeah. Mhm.
I don't need you if that's what you're going to do. I need you to be able to think on your feet and show me that you add value, or I
Plus,
can agree.
plus, ChatGPT makes stuff up too.
Well,
So
it's
you got to know
hallucinations.
how to
Yeah,
figure that out too.
yeah. I mean, if you're on a data set from 1985, right, and you ask it about something in 1999, it'll give you an answer,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have the data set to
I asked
really
it.
give you
I
the
asked
answer.
it when it first came out. I started asking it. Tell me about Dr. Orman. What does he think about this or that? The stuff that I'd written about, in one or more of my books, and it came back with complete BS, and
Yeah.
as if that's what I thought or what I said, and it wasn't even close. But and I knew it, but if somebody else had asked the question, they would assume that was
Well, that's the
gospel truth.
problem. It's not like a Google search. It'll give you an answer, and the
Yeah.
answer might look like that's reasonable, but you
Yes.
have to check it because it
Yes.
can hallucinate. It can derive the wrong information.
Yes.
I've
Yes.
gone, in chat prompting engineering, ask it to do something. Then the next day I asked it to do the same thing and it says it can't do it. Then I said, well, you did this before. Can you do it today? And then it went, oh yeah, I can. So it's constantly shifting,
Yes.
and so you can't, it's a tool to me. It's a tool. I could use it to cross check something, but I'm not going to use it as my main source.
Yeah.
I use it as a thing to say, well, what is it doing here? And then I'm going to go do my own work. And then I could run the comparison. Well, it's not accurate. I'm going to go with what I did. So, but some people, the mistake they're making is they're using it as the primary source.
Yes.
And then that's like disastrous.
Mhm.
But I want to thank you for being here today, and we do have your links to your Amazon and
Uh-huh.
to your website. So if people click on Amazon, they'll go right to your book.
That if you click on that link, but if they go to my website, they'll also see where the book is there, and they can get to Amazon through that. Also, just go to docorman.com, and you'll see a lot of stuff about me there.
Have you been on tour with your book, or do you have a like
No, just
audio
virtual.
version?
Just virtual.
Virtual. Do you have an audio version of your book?
Not yet.
Are you thinking of making one?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Are you thinking of actually doing the narration yourself or getting actors?
No, I would do it myself.
Do it yourself.
Now I have many other books, and some of those have audio versions that we hired somebody to do. This was years ago, but and they did a very good job. But this one I'll probably do myself.
You think? Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
No, just personally, I like it when the author does it because I think it feels like
Yeah.
it's their idea, it's their concept. They kind of want to hear it from them.
Yeah.
But
And
that's
then I have 3 books that are about to come out on curing road rage.
Oh wow.
So one is for parents, one's for young drivers, and one's for professional drivers and commuters, people on the road all day long. So that'll be fun when those come out.
Yeah. I mean, well, I used to be an Uber, and I would have loved that. 'Cause that was always the fear of the people getting triggered.
But it's the same three filters. Road rage is no different than any other kind of rage or any other kind of anger. It's always when things happen on the road, you look at it through those three filters, and it makes you angry. And then you do what you do when you get angry, which is usually not good. People get aggressive and they get punitive, and then they do all kinds of nasty things. But it's all coming. The anger is coming from the same three filters, which often have distortions in them.
Yeah, which seems very distorted when it's like, was they really worth going to jail for that?
Yeah.
It's like that you've lost like the moment. It's like, do you not know where you are? Like it seems like it's like you've gotten so in your headspace.
Yes.
That you totally are making judgments that are out of like time with the present space you're in.
Well, they say, and I believe it's true, that when you get stressed, when you get really upset, the hormones that get secreted in the body affect the frontal lobe of the brain, where we make, do our rational decision making, and it really diminishes your brain power when you get angry and stressed. You're not really thinking well when you're really angry, because your cortex is shut down to a certain degree.
Well, I think that'll be highly useful to a lot of people who are on the road, and just in life, I think to reduce that or make people understand that is highly. I think it's very.
It's important for saving relationships and families, and people going through divorce, for example. There's a lot of anger that gets stirred up when they go through divorce. So I'm working with some divorce coaches to be a help there. So, I mean, there's a lot of, and of course, as a physician, we see the health impacts.
With blood pressure and other illnesses that get,
heart disease and strokes and stuff like that. I mean, and again, that's another part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I know that if we can lower people's anger levels, not only can we, keep them more happily married and have their families be more stable and emotionally stable, and we can improve their health, and we can keep them from losing their jobs and screwing up their careers. I mean, there's so many, or getting into road rage, incidents on the road, and maybe ending up dead.
With societal benefit, make people more productive.
Yes.
To make them, to make society safer.
Yes.
At the microcosm and macrocosm level, it's good.
And we would live in a happier world, less wars. I mean, anger turns into war,
Yeah, it escalates. It just goes from microcosm to macrocosm. And but I want to thank you again for being here and having this discussion, because this is like why we do the podcast, so we can have these longer, form discussions and kind of really dive into an issue. And I want to thank you for being on the show. And we encourage people to click on the link to your website and check out the Amazon link. They're fully clickable. We've been live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We will be on the other platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast by tomorrow. I want to thank you again for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks.